This is Thumbing Through the Archives, a weekly radio show and podcast focusing on Michigan history, airing every Wednesday night from 5:30 to 7 p.m. on WMIC 660 AM and 95.3 FM. Also streaming in podcast form at our website, senlacbroadcasting.com. Now your hosts Mike Gallagher, Nick Lean, and Erica Frisbee.
All right, and we are back once again with another episode of Thumbing Through the Archives, a podcast about the history, mysteries, and curiosities in Michigan. I'm Erica Frisbee. I am the Sanilac Broadcasting News Director, and with me, per usual, is Nick Lean.
Hi.
And Mike Gallagher.
Hello.
Do you guys want to give your official titles? Because I forgot about that.
No, it's all right.
No.
Mike is the sports editor at the Sanilac County News, and Nick is my boss, but he is the assistant manager at Sanilac Broadcasting Company. So we are back with part 2 of the McPhee incident, which hopefully you guys caught last week's episode because that was part 1. We will, of course, be recapping in just a bit, but first of all, what do you guys remember?
We didn't take that long of a break in between recordings, so
We didn't.
pretty much caught up to speed on everything.
Yeah, I was looking at my notes, and of a lot of the episodes we've done, this is the one that I'm really interested, especially so, in kind of hearing the outcome, because I don't know about this. You know, this is the first that I've learned about it. So I'm kind of literally like on the edge of my seat. Like a lot of times Erica will come in and talk with me off the air about the episode we're doing or, you know, research that she's been doing into something, and you did not for this one. So it was kind of nice for it to be a surprise, and I'm genuinely have no idea where this is going to go.
Yeah, that was partially because, for instance, with the John Norman Collins case, I had a lot of people being my sounding board for that, and there was just so much research. With the McPhee incident, I kind of found everything and then just buried myself into it. Mm-hmm. And since it was such a quick turnaround time, I didn't really have time to, I shared some stuff with Mike, but that was only because of the fact that he was the one who put me on this episode. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And also because some of the stuff that I found related back to questions he had from the Prohibition episode, like the last name of Sheriff Lulu, which is Macaulay, and then the first name of Sheriff McGinnis, which is Emily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was telling my wife kind of about it, and when we, I got to the part about the severed limbs in the fire, and she just goes, wait, what? So to her that was a smoking gun, that old Bill McPhee may have been up to something here.
Yep.
But as I recall in our discussions, we were kind of wondering if a fire could do that, or if that's like as suspicious as it might seem, and to her it was.
Yeah, and that is a conversation that they had over 100 years ago when the case was happening as well. Mm-hmm.
Is there a way, if someone did not listen to part 1, is there a way to, in a paragraph, sum up what we discussed?
A couple, Esther and William McPhee, lived in Melvin in 1923. One day in March, they wake up. Bill goes down to start doing some chores, and Esther somehow becomes trapped in a closet and is set on fire. Apparently, William dissuaded neighbors from going up and saving Esther, and about 2 to 3 months after the fire, after everyone has said, oh, this isn't suspicious, suddenly 207 members of the community come together, sign a petition to the Attorney General saying, hey, you need to check this out. And that is how William McPhee is brought back from Detroit, because he moved down there after Esther's death with the inheritance that he got from Esther's death. And am I forgetting anything?
No, that's the gist of it. Mm-hmm. And there, there's little detail. It would be impossible to fill a listener in without rehashing the whole thing. But, details that stand out to me are like William saying that they woke up 2 hours earlier than normal at 5 a.m, and then I just have this image in my head of villagers picking through the rubble, pulling out arms and legs.
The villagers were mostly helpful. They seemed to locate all the smoking guns thus far in the case. For instance, the heat warped hammer that may or may not be a murder weapon, the limb bones that were not tested to see if they were human before they were put into the casket.
Right. And then also, just one more thing, where we left off, kind of a twist in the story, was the daddy thing with his maybe mistress?
Maybe mistress, but more like sugar baby. Mm-hmm. Like, although Sugar Baby implies that she did stuff for the money, she really only talked and hung out with him.
Platonic.
For her, it was very platonic. For him, he was in love with her, proposed to marriage to her, and when she refused, he told her to call him daddy and ask for money.
All perfectly normal things.
I was going to say, if somebody did that to me nowadays, it would just be a sugar daddy arrangement thing, just cut and simple.
Which essentially is what it was.
Yeah.
She was getting money.
Yeah. She got $400 to $500 of it.
His dead wife's money.
Yeah. And a ring from his dead wife as well.
Classy Bill.
Who he said was dead for 16 years when she wasn't even dead for 6 months.
Right. Okay, I think we're caught up, essentially.
You think so, Mike? Okay. We technically left off right before the trial began. So Billy McPhee was incarcerated before trial in July-ish. They start hunting for Geraldine, who is the Dear Daddy girl, about the same time, which, again, a bit of me is like, I don't know if they really did a good job at hunting Geraldine because she was giving interviews to the newspapers. So the newsmen were able to find her, so why weren't the police?
Right.
Were the police hoping that he had shared details with her about it, or
that, and also trying to figure out if he knew her before the fire, so like if she was a motive for the fire, so to speak,
because he had been traveling to Detroit.
Yeah, he seemed to like to go out on larks quite a bit. Apparently he had abandoned his wife for at least 11 months out of the prior year.
Is that normal in the 1920s? I mean, I know there were a lot of, like, my grandmother had her husband walk out on her. Like, I know that was a thing that happened a lot back then, but...
Well, I think you said he didn't believe in divorce.
He didn't believe in divorce. They separated 3 times, and he would just go out on larks, so I guess he would just leave, and I guess this time it took him 11 months to get over whatever they fought about.
So
I could see that probably being common for the time.
Yeah.
You know, a man not believing in divorce and...
Just...
Yeah, basically making her deal with it. I mean, it was a different time.
Typical man.
Yeah.
Not believing in divorce and just killing her instead.
Oh, yeah.
Typical man.
That's not quite as common as, well, maybe.
I'm wondering if that's what happened, though. But I guess we'll see.
So, again, we ended right before jury selection. McPhee is being represented by 2 lawyers, Fred Farr and C.F. Gates. C.F. Gates is kind of the hot shot of the 2. Like, Farr has his moments, but C.F. Gates, he, like, goes down in local history because of this case and because of another case that I'm hoping to discuss soon. I'm still doing the research on that one, too.
Are they both local?
Yes, very local. The next one happens, like, 3 years after the McPhee incident and over in Forester, I believe.
Our favorite town.
Our favorite town. Our favorite town that only gets mentioned and never gets elaborated on. So jury selection began on Monday, October 15th, taking about 3 days to select the panel of 13 men from a pool of 50 to 60 men. Women were kind of allowed on juries, but it wasn't very common. Like, around the same time, there was another sensational case that was happening where there were 2 women jurors, and they made a big deal about that because, they were able to sit there stone-faced and, like, very unbiased, objectively deliver a sentence of justice on their fellow woman because it was a woman who had done wrong and everything like that. And
I can't believe they were able to control their emotions.
I know. You know us women overreacting, always emotional, just crazy.
Nothing against you women. It's just how you're made. It's just natural.
Always getting caught in closets and
Just getting set on fire.
Setting yourself on fire.
Even though I'm deathly afraid of fire.
Yeah. How do you let that happen?
That's because I'm a woman.
Yeah.
I'm flammable.
Yeah. It's a shame.
So when the trial began on the afternoon of October 17th, Prosecutor RJ West addressed the jury for 70 minutes, with the first witness being Esther's older brother, George, who would testify about his sister's health and her relationship with William. He was one of at least 25 endorsed witnesses for the trial, with other Melvin citizens to join him on the stand. In his address to the jury, West gave details about the McPhees' relationship, the fire, and the character indications of the defendant, which he claims he will establish to indicate guilt on the part of the prisoner.
So this is not George Clayton? Is it a different George? Or is it the same?
Different George.
Okay.
There's two Georges. George Gilbert is this one. George Clayton, for listeners, was the justice of the peace who signed the arrest warrant for Billy McPhee's arrest and also testified against him in a move that would not be really allowed nowadays.
Right.
So he outlined the case to the jury, pointing out that Esther was the one who actually owned the house and claiming that she was why the couple were financially stable. He hoped to prove that McPhee was acting out of sorts before the fire, had dissuaded efforts to save Esther from the fire, and showed lack of interest in her fate. He also hoped to establish that witnesses who cut through the floor of the closet Esther was trapped in saw burning sticks of kindling wood, while those cutting through the side of the closet claimed to have seen a heap of wood burning beside the body. Add to that the fact that McPhee would allegedly avoid questions about the incident and changed his story about what he was doing before the fire, and RJ West concluded that something was amiss in the situation. He finished his statement by defining direct and circumstantial evidence. If McPhee was stressed at the beginning of the trial, he did not seem it, with the Times-Herald reporting, "The defendant is the center of interest in the enclosure about the judge's bench. All day long, he sits in the crowded courtroom gazing out the window or shading his eyes with his hand. Neatly dressed, clean-shaven and trim, he takes his accustomed seat each morning and, with clear, untroubled eyes, scans the faces of the jurors. Seldom does he confer with his attorney, and then very briefly. Sometimes he chews gum. He never glances towards the back of the courtroom where sit a score or more former friends and neighbors who are responsible for his trial." Which, fair. I don't know if I would want to look at the people who are trying to put me in jail.
A little awkward.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if it's like, I used to be your guys' village president.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get into like why one person may have kind of started the whole thing, but it's like, why do you think everybody went along with this? Like, do you think everybody actually thought he was guilty, or do you think people had like personal gripes with him and just
that's a good question.
Pushed it?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if there were any records of complaints or disagreements between him and people in Melvin.
Mm-hmm.
Council meeting minutes or something. I don't know if those were even kept back then.
Yeah, I have no idea. I like the fact that they include that he chews gum sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing I thought of when he said that was like, oh, gross, whale fat. Like,
oh gosh.
What is he chewing on?
Hopefully by that time it's the actual kind of chewing gum that we know and love today.
The synthetic chewing gum.
Yeah, hopefully it's that and not like, ooh, whale fat. So one of the first points of evidence discussed in the case was a supposed mass of kindling found with the body. Prosecution claimed that the wood being found near the body indicated that it was used to try and incinerate the body and torch the home, while the defense says the wood came from the building as fire made the structure crumble in on itself. But
you had mentioned witnesses potentially seeing that when they were cutting through the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Did they ever establish, are you getting to that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to support their claim, the prosecution pointed to Charles McKernan, a Melvin hay buyer, who said he knocked a hole into the closet wall and saw a 4-by-4-foot heap of blazing wood and coals. This was partially attested to by Delos Robin, who had axed to the floor and instead of finding Esther, brought down a bushel of burning wood, with the wood being cut in 1-foot-long pieces.
Maybe he just keeps it in the closet.
I know this isn't the important detail, but his title was hay buyer.
Yes.
That was like his job.
He bought hay.
Oh, that wasn't his last name?
No. McKernan is his last name, but hay buyer is his trade.
You would think it would be hay seller.
You would think so, but yeah, no, I saw that and I was kind of curious about it, but then I remembered that I can't remember if it was Sanborn or if it was McMorrin who was the one to discover that putting the hay directly on the train was useful, but he was also a hay buyer. So it's a legitimate thing.
Right.
I think it was McMorrin, if I remember right.
But more so being like the middleman.
So he didn't necessarily grow the hay or use it.
He just
bought it.
Bought it in bulk and
sold it, I guess. Listeners, if you happen to know what a hay buyer is.
Well, because I feel like a lot of people just buy hay as part of what, like if they were a farmer, but...
To be fair, who do they buy the hay from? I know presumably other farmers, but...
Right.
Apparently back then it was the hay buyer.
See, I feel like he would be called a hay salesman or something. Like just specifically hay buyer is a funny way to put it. Again, I know it's not the important detail, but...
It's important to you, so it's important.
Yes.
We should do an episode on that.
Well, like whenever we do these episodes, there's all these...
Cool little
Yeah, like the
Details.
McPhee worked at the beanery where they sorted beans.
Soybeans, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, a lot of cool jobs back then.
Oh, yeah. But yes, the hay buyer saw a 4 foot wide, 4 foot tall bushel of burning wood, allegedly, when he axed a hole through the wall. And then when they axed the hole through the floor, instead of bringing down the body initially, they brought down burning wood.
You mean it fell down?
It fell down. So another point was McPhee's behavior during the fire, with Warner Smith brought back to the stand. Warner Smith is the 75-year-old janitor who was the first on the scene. He was brought back to the stand to testify to the man's behavior at the fire. Being the first one on scene, Smith found McPhee in the dining room, allegedly sorting through papers as smoke came from the second floor. The old janitor admonished McPhee, giving him his lantern and telling him to go save his wife. Shortly after, though, McPhee returned, saying it was impossible. Neighbor Albert Clayton was also brought to the stand on the second day of trial, testifying that McPhee stood by during the fire, leaning on a fence as he watched the house burn, with clean hands and clothes. The clothes, a sweater and overcoat, were not damaged or covered in smoke, as if he had fought through flames as he had claimed. Another angle brought up by the prosecution was Geraldine, who was the supposed third angle in a triangle with McPhee. She was subpoenaed to appear for testimony in the case. Again, we will get back to her in a minute. So, despite the promising start for the prosecution, there was a 2-day crisis in the case on October 20th and 21st, as Judge Watson Beach had to decide if he allowed questions by the prosecution to the county coroner about the second inquest and exhumation of the corpse, thus giving the prosecution direct evidence of a crime. If the question was not allowed, the prosecution would have to continue to prove that a crime had indeed occurred. The question that the prosecution wanted to pose concerned if Esther's limbs had been burned off during the fire or cut off before the fire, while the defense argued that the inquest findings were inadmissible until a crime was actually proven. Upon this crisis hung most of the prosecution's case, as it would also allow them to use witness testimony of conversations between themselves and the defendant to be direct evidence and thus put into court records. Ultimately, Judge Beach allowed the questioning, having decided that it had been proven a crime was committed. Thus, County Coroner G.S. Tweedy,
There he is.
testified that the limbs had been cut, not burned, a conclusion that was later echoed for the prosecution by 2 other doctors, Dr. J.E. Campbell of Brown City and Dr. L.E. Cochran of Peck. Also on October 21st, it was reported that Geraldine Ross had given herself up to police as a material witness, being taken into custody despite her protests that arrest was unnecessary. On the 22nd, she had several newspaper interviews published wherein she was described as pretty and petite, a shapely brunette with large, soft brown eyes and bobbed hair. She declared that she was ready to testify that McPhee had given her money after his wife's death and that he had told her to call him Dad, claiming it was his nickname. I have no comments about the nickname.
No, I will say that's probably one of the better ways a woman has been described by the local newspapers.
Oh, yeah. No, there's literally another case that I was looking into called A Woman a Beast.
Okay.
So this is, if anything, they were in love with Geraldine Ross. Oh my goodness, she's so pretty.
Right. I do kind of agree with her that she probably didn't need to be in custody.
No, probably not. But at the same time, because of the fact that it took authorities so long to find her.
Yeah.
I wondered if she was evading them.
I wonder if they were embarrassed that she had evaded them for so long. So they were just kind of to jail with you.
Yeah.
That's at least my theory, but.
And she was a woman in the 1920s, so.
But she was pretty and petite.
Yeah.
What do they call her? Shapely?
Shapely. I feel like I would be sued if I described anybody as that nowadays, especially in my news.
I guess for newspapers back then, it probably was more important to
that is true.
Describe
Paint
people.
A picture.
Yeah. I mean, for the most part, you weren't running a lot of pictures in the paper and stuff.
That's true. And to their credit, the pictures of Geraldine do match up to the descriptions.
Yeah, that's fair.
She is fairly pretty, especially for 1923 standards. But yeah, the shapely brunette with large, soft brown eyes and bobbed hair. I would love to be described like that, but never. But she said that they were friendly but not engaged, though he had proposed to her shortly after meeting. When she first heard the news, she thought the news was about Isaac, McPhee's son, but then realized it was about William when she saw bits of her telegram published in the papers. So she also revealed that a turquoise ring of Esther's had been given to her after Esther's death, but insisted it was a token of friendship, not engagement. She also claimed that she lost the ring while swimming over the summer, noting that she was more upset about the diamond ring she had lost alongside the friendship ring. Which a bit of me was kind of like, maybe don't reveal that you had evidence and lost evidence.
Yeah.
Just maybe don't. Like, not necessarily that it makes you look guilty, but it's also just like, that helped no one.
Right.
If anything, it made her look a little bit shallow because she was like, yeah, no, I'm more disappointed that I lost the diamond ring. And it's like, the newspaper men were kind of like, but the other ring was evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Geraldine, for as much as she claimed to hate publicity, still entertained newspapermen from her place at the Sanilac County Jail, being described as a gracious host with a charming smile. According to the Times-Herald, when asked whether or not she was afraid of the gossip, she haughtily stated that she was living her own life, and just to prove it, walked down Sandusky's Main Street Monday evening in the company of Miss Fanny McGinnis, undersheriff. Far more than one baleful look was thrown her way from the matrons of the county seat, but a considerable improvement in the necktie of the male element of the town was noted, which I'm assuming like they loosened their collars because like, oh my gosh, she's so pretty.
Mm-hmm.
Auga.
Yes.
Like that.
Yeah.
Their eyes were popping out of their head.
Honestly, probably. Mrs. Ross at present has only one fear, and her parting words emphasized it. Don't say anything I didn't say, or else I'll pull your hair out. She laughingly told each reporter as he left the little county jail office where she's spending the majority of her time a virtual prisoner. She's an interesting one.
Yeah.
I just don't understand why she's in jail. I mean, I know we talked about that, you know, that it may have been spite on the part of the investigators, but like, is that necessary?
Yes and no.
Is she a flight risk? Like,
I think they're treating her like a flight risk. I don't think she's an actual flight risk, especially considering the fact that they let her go out
Right.
for a walk.
right.
So she's more free than a prisoner, but she's still stuck there.
Mm-hmm.
Which especially sucks because from my research, it looked like she had a residence in Sandusky.
Oh, really?
So she could have just stayed there for a little bit.
Right.
But nah.
So she was from Detroit, but she did have a residence in Sandusky?
If not a residence in Sandusky of her own, she had friends that she would stay with for long stretches of time. But it doesn't seem that McPhee knew her from Sandusky. It seemed that he knew her from Detroit.
Wow.
Yeah, Sandusky, like, Sanilac County seemed to be a little bit more hoppin' back in the day, honestly. So while Geraldine is getting called pretty and giving interviews at the county jail, McPhee's lawyers were attacking the medical testimony, with C.F. Gates managing to get Tweedy to admit on the stand that he had limited experiences with cases of fire, as well as the fact that bones made brittle by fire can easily break. Still, the prosecution seemed to be making progress, with their case summed up to 5 points. 1, that McPhee made no attempt to rescue his wife even when it was safer to do so. 2, that there were sticks of wood in the closet with the body, indicating a purposeful fire. 3, that McPhee's hands, face, and clothes were clean, proving that he had not attempted a rescue. 4, a claw hammer with nails welded to the ironwork of the head of the hammer were found with the body and presumed to be the murder weapon. And 5, that the mutilated condition of the body was not because of the fire, but actions prior to the flames.
Was the furnace in the house, was it on the second floor?
It was in the basement.
Right, that makes sense. I mean, that would really be the only reason why you would have wood in the closet, I guess. But
Yeah, I have no idea.
like, otherwise, you would just keep it in the basement.
You would assume so, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's not looking great for him right now. But I do think when Tweedy said that he didn't really have much experience with fires, like that probably goes for a lot of people involved in this case.
Oh, yeah. There's like at least one of the other medical examiners in this case gets called out for it as well. And it's just like, I mean, yes, it's a ding, but at the same time, smaller county.
Right. How often do you deal with something like this?
I took a look and it seems that like there were fires, but it was more like hay and barn and stuff like that. And like animals were more likely to die than people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not as if they saw what happened to people after they died by fire.
Right.
The prosecution would go on to call neighbors as witnesses on October 23rd to help prove the first and second points, with the prior testimony finally added to the record as direct testimony. Neighbors were also asked to testify to the fact that Billy Jack had been without money before death but had profited from the death, and that he told conflicting stories of his actions upon waking up. Testimony was also given by the previously mentioned doctors about the calcination of bones, which would have begun once they began burning. A word about how bones burn, as based on research by Durham University professor Tim Thompson. Skeletons do not burn uniformly, with some bones burning at a higher intensity than others due to factors like body fat distribution, proximity to the fire source.
Yeah, it's very... I'm no expert, but just from what you're saying and from what I've read, it's very unlikely that a limb could be severed just from fire, and it's impossible that multiple limbs would be.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah. Bones also go through 4 stages of transformation when burned. Dehydration, which is where the water is removed from the bone due to the intense heat evaporating internal moisture. This happens at a temperature range of 212 to 932 degrees Fahrenheit. Then decomposition occurs, which is when the organic component of the bone, specifically the collagen, is lost. Dehydration and decomposition can cause the bone to be easier to break. The third stage is where calcination occurs, but the stage itself is called inversion, which sees changes to the inorganic mineral part of the bone like the carbonates. This occurs at a temperature range of 932 to 2012 degrees Fahrenheit, with the average house fire burning at a heat of 1112 degrees Fahrenheit. So calcination could have started in the house fire, since it's kerosene and if there actually was wood in the closet. Mm-hmm. But we also know that there were clothes in the closet as well, which could have been another fuel source. The stage where cremation occurs is usually the 4th stage, the fusion stage, where crystals that form the bone mineral start to melt and coalesce together, and this happens at temperatures of 1292 to 2192 degrees Fahrenheit. Inversion and fusion usually results in bones shrinking, having reduced porosity, increased crystallinity, and a conversion to a more ceramic-like material with high heats prompting calcination. Why the explanation? Because the case for the time seemed to hinge on whether the bones had calcined or not, and perhaps more importantly, if the doctors identifying such bone changes were qualified to do so. For instance, both Tweedy and J.E. Campbell had to admit that they had limited experiences with fire or burnt bodies in general. Still, they insisted that the bones had not calcined, suggesting that her bones had not been brittle enough to have broken after the fire, thus meaning her limbs were taken before the fire. The defense argued that the bones had broken due to the fire and a fall from a great height. To quote the Times-Herald, L.E. Cochran of Peck, the third physician who testified at the cemetery inquest 3 weeks after the fire, testified under the cross-examination of C.F. Gates, defense attorney, that the calcination of the bones, making them brittle, would start as soon as heat reached them. In an answer to a question put by RJ West, prosecuting attorney, a few minutes later, the witness said that calcination had not started on the bones when he observed them at the inquest. Dr. Cochran testified that the bones could have cracked by the application of cold water while they were still in the flames. Then he was asked how much of a fall would be necessary to cause a fracture of the arm in the case of a person of Mrs. McPhee's size. He replied that an ordinary fall could cause such a fracture. And they're saying that she fell from at least like a height of 5 feet when she fell through the floor.
But weren't there multiple limbs found?
It was at least 2.
Okay.
And they never specified if they thought it was a arm limb or a leg limb. Even though they went back and forth with all that, I don't really know if they came to a definitive conclusion of how the bones had cracked or if they were actually calcinated, because the prosecution witnesses are saying that they didn't, but the defense will be saying that they had, and which is why they were breaking. Okay, and we're back. So, 9th day of trial, and the neighbors were back on the stand with Warner Smith now reporting that McPhee had asked, "Do you think I started the fire to burn up my wife's body?" Which, if I heard that from my neighbor after his wife burned in a fire, I definitely would be like...
Wait, that was at the scene?
Apparently.
Wow.
I don't know how I would react if somebody asked me that.
That probably wasn't even on his mind at the time.
Right.
The guy he said that to.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking that before, but now I do.
Which is part of the reason why I'm like, It's not that I don't believe Warner Smith. It's just more so the fact of like, whenever there's like a very obviously suspicious thing that is said and only one person is saying that it was said, it's always like,
yeah,
take it with a grain of salt kind of thing. But in addition to Billy allegedly asking people like, do you think that I started the fire to burn her body? It was also learned that the insurance on the home had been increased by $2,000, almost $40,000 now in January, so 3 months before the fire, with journalists noting that Geraldine had received about $500 from McPhee within 3 months of his wife's death.
But it was his wife's home, though, right?
Yes.
So did she increase the insurance policy?
Yes.
Okay.
He alleges that he knew nothing about it, but he also in the same breath was like, we trusted each other with our money and stuff like that. We knew of each other's expenditures, but he alleges that he didn't know about this. Which, like, I don't know. I feel like husband and wife would hopefully bring up, hey, I increased the insurance on the house.
A normal husband and wife, but they're
not normal.
right.
This is the couple that will separate 3 times but not divorce.
Right.
Yeah, it could have been done like when he was
In
gone.
Detroit.
Maybe she was planning on burning him in the house.
There's a
Dun,
twist.
dun, dun.
Yep. She increased the insurance. He wouldn't give her a divorce. And then it all went wrong somehow when she got trapped in the closet.
Could be.
Could be. Something to think about.
Makes you think.
This poor woman.
Well,
She was dug up at least twice.
yeah.
Well, she shouldn't have planned on...
Shouldn't have increased that insurance policy.
Yeah.
That's all the evidence I need.
Oh my gosh. So for the defense's part, they charged that the Melvin citizens had banded together against Billy Jack with one witness, Charles McKernan. So Charles McKernan, the hay buyer, he admitted to making a $7 bet. So that would be now $130. He made a bet with his hairdresser, of all people, that Billy would get convicted.
But he also testified in the...
He testified, but he was making this bet that he was going to get convicted.
Wow.
McKernan insisted he had made the bet only after his testimony, and so a mistrial or a striking of his testimony was not done. As for Miss Geraldine Ross, her testimony was severely limited, reduced to only testifying about the ring that Billy Jack had gifted her. She has all this money from Billy Jack. She says that he proposed to her, like, saying all this stuff, is only able to say it to the newspaper, not to the jury, because I'm not sure if it was the prosecution or if it was the defense, but either way, they made it so that she could only testify about the ring that he gave her. And it's just a little bit funny because everybody, like the press, the witnesses, the bystanders in the court, they were all so excited for Geraldine Ross to get on the stand to the point where they would like crowd the courtroom on days where they thought that she would show up, but she didn't. To her and the court's audience surprise and disappointment, testimony only lasted 3 minutes, hardly worth the 3 or so months of publicity she attracted.
Right.
And that is where she drops out of her script.
Wow. That's kind of disappointing.
What's weird is all of that information that they would not allow her to testify on was already like... I'm sure even the jurors knew about it.
Yeah.
Like it was all so public. So why, I guess, if it's found to be like not relevant then...
It was either that it was not relevant or it was extremely prejudicial. But at the same
But
time,
it's already
Like-
been...
Like, technically, he didn't do anything illegal when he gave her the money. It was just kind of,
weird.
yeah.
Yeah, I get it. But there is an argument to be made that like the proposal stuff and him
Right.
disappearing for 11 months and all that might...
And then also being like, oh, my wife's been dead for 16 years.
Right. Seems like a little bit of a pointing towards a motive to me. But I'm not a lawyer.
We're certainly not 1920s lawyers.
Exactly.
No. I would love to be a 1920s lawyer. That seems like it would
Seems
be
like-
an easier
yeah.
job.
So
than...
easy.
Yeah.
So on the stand longer than Geraldine were lamp manufacturers and oil experts who testified that it was unlikely for the lamp to have exploded the way that McPhee claimed. To refute this, the defense presented witnesses who claimed the same kind of lamp had exploded and caused fires for them as well. The defense also presented defense witnesses who testified that McPhee had shed tears over his wife's death at the scene of the fire, and 2 witnesses, an in-home nurse and a neighbor, testified to the recent state of the relationship, which was favorable. In general, the main points the defense brought up was the amount of effort Billy put into the rescue despite being dazed, the fact that bones can be destroyed by flames, that clothes in the closet could have been sufficient kindling, and that the lamp Esther had that day regularly malfunctioned and or exploded. They also claimed that the hammer found belonged to Esther, was not used to bludgeon her, that the body could have been broken after being subjected to intense heat, then cold water, and then being unceremoniously pulled down via a hooked ladder. They also presented their own expert testimony with medical witness, a doctor from East Tawas named J.W. Weed. He testified for over 3 hours, but was still open to attacks from the prosecution, who claimed that his medical testimony was contradicted by the fact that he agreed bones would not calcinate when surrounded by flesh still. It was a minor point, but they were still like, technicality. Mm-hmm. But the case was ticking down to the main event now, Billy Jack's own testimony. William Billy Jack McPhee took the stand on Halloween 1923, spending most, if not the whole day on the stand. According to the Times-Herald, he recounted his story thus. McPhee testified that he was awakened at 5 a.m. by Mrs. McPhee and went downstairs to start breakfast and build a fire in the furnace, leaving his wife to gather clothing for the wash. Each of them carried an oil lamp. He continued his story in part. I lit one burner in the oil stove and put the tea kettle on. Then I put the lamp on the dining room table and went to the hen coop to cut kindling. I built a fire in the furnace and put the lamp on the kitchen cabinet. When I smelled smoke, I went to the front of the house to open the door, thinking it was from the furnace, as my wife was always very particular about those things. When I got there, the smoke was denser. I went upstairs, and when I got to the top of the stairs, I couldn't see nothing. The smoke was very thick, and I couldn't see a light, so I went downstairs to get help. I pounded on a big gasoline tank in the yard, then I went up the hill yelling fire. I went back and went upstairs again and saw a clear space between the smoke and the floor, so I tried to crawl to the door. The smoke got too thick and choked me, and I went downstairs again. This time, I saw Warner and told him my wife was in the fire burning up. I don't remember what he said, but he was there when I came back again. This time, I saw Robbins or Thody, I don't know which. The first time I was upstairs, I didn't know my wife was in the closet, but this time I did. Here, the defendant's voice faltered and he bowed his head. Robbins asked me what was the matter. I said my woman was in the fire burning up. He said, "Can we get her out?" And I said, "I don't think so." He said, "Have you got an axe?" I said yes, and he said, "Go and get it." Now, I understand they say I walked. Well, I ran. I came back and told him where to chop. When he got a hole through, a bunch of fire came falling down. I believe I did say, "Get out of the way or you'll be burned up." "Could you see up into the closet?" Mr. Gates asked the defendant. No, it was just a ball of fire. In addition to this testimony, he denied his sister-in-law's claims that he had said that there was no jewelry saved from the fire save for a watch that he gave to his niece. This was a big deal because Isaac received 2 diamond rings from the ruins of his stepmother's house given to him by William. So, allegedly, William told Esther's sister-in-law, so George Gilbert's wife, that, "Oh, I only found this watch in the flames. No other jewelry survived." But then Isaac McPhee receives 2 diamond rings, supposedly from the house after the fire took place. And he says that he did not tell the sister-in-law that the watch was the only thing. To add to that, he claimed that the in-laws had been friendly with him until the will had been read and found to favor William. So he's alleging that they're jealous / want his money. Mm-hmm. Both the defense and William pointed to one George Windsor of Melvin as the reason McPhee was defending himself against dangerous gossip, with George Windsor having fought with William about Hugh McPhee's estate, which William had inherited. Hugh McPhee is William's dad. Mm-hmm. Windsor was apparently a large influence on the petition, being the one to frame it and have conferences with witnesses for it. It was not elaborated on why George Windsor had an interest in William's father's estate, though based on my research, he may have been a banker, so possibly would have had an interest for that reason. Also, though, if this research is true, I should also mention that 3 years after this case, George Windsor would go missing with $34,000, almost $630,000 now, from Melvin's bank. Despite insisting that he was an honest man to a Times-Herald reporter before he went missing.
You said if this research is...
If this research is accurate, if this George Windsor is the same George Windsor who framed the petition to send William McPhee to jail.
how many George Windsors could there be
in Melvin?
Right.
Who, so there's two George Windsors who both are money guys and both would have an interest in,
Yeah, exactly.
the odds of that being a different person are pretty slim.
Very slim, but at the same time, have to technically give that note of deniability. But from the looks of things, George Windsor may have not been the most honest guy from the get-go. So if he was the one framing this, he says that it wasn't for a petty and malicious reason.
Mm-hmm.
Cross-examination was grueling for McPhee, lasting 4 hours and featuring questions such as, why didn't he try to save his wife when the fire was still contained to the closet? How did he have time to get valuables and papers but not time to save Esther? Where were the rest of the bones? And why were the couple up so early if Esther's shift didn't start until 7:30 a.m. and Billy Jack himself said that they woke up usually between 6 and 7? He really didn't have answers to those questions.
Yeah, those are valid questions.
Those are all
too.
good questions, yeah.
Yeah. So November 2nd, 1923, and the courtroom was filled to 3 times its normal capacity as closing statements were given. The prosecution took 2 hours to re-explain their case, arguing that it was improbable that the family would have gotten up so early, that Esther would have begun chores without dressing first, that the fire could have started without some kind of outcry from Esther, and that the fire should have destroyed the body. He accused the defense of throwing a smokescreen of charges against the prosecutor to obscure salient points of the case. For their part, each defense attorney took 2 hours as well, with the defense referring again and again to the 30 to 40 people conference that had been had by witnesses before all of this began, with Gates charging George Windsor as the real motivating factor, being an enemy of Billy's. He also pointed out that before the petition, everyone, including the coroner, had agreed on the cause of death and that it was natural. To quote the Times-Herald, Gates ended his address with, "There are 12 of you gentlemen that will go into the jury to pass upon the fate of Mr. McPhee. 12 of you to bear the burden of whatever your verdict may be. May your conscience be as clear over the verdict that you may render in this case as the defendant's conscience is at this moment, and may you and yours be dealt with as you now deal with Mr. McPhee. Men, this poor broken man already suffered enough with the loss of his noble wife, the burning of his home, and the merciless persecution of the conscienceless horde. Is there anything not worse than this? If there is, it will be your verdict." When court had adjourned, William engaged in a cheerful conversation with a half-dozen friends within the enclosure. Smiling and laughing, he was once again the Billy Jack of the days before his arrest. He showed no trace of worry over the verdict so soon to determine whether he shall go to prison for life or return to his taxi business in Detroit. If the long cross-examination and subsequent accusations of the prosecution had affected his nerve, he gave no indication. "Whether they convict me or not, I'm glad it's nearly over," he smiled and settled his cap lightly on his head as he started down the stairs to spend another night, perhaps his last, in the old red brick jail. With the jury released at 1:30 p.m., it would take them almost 10 hours to come to an agreement. Before releasing them, the judge advised the jury to find McPhee guilty of manslaughter if they felt that McPhee just did not do enough to save his wife. And that is what they did. Unconvinced that a murder had happened, but convinced that Billy had done something that wasn't on the level, the jury found him guilty of manslaughter at 11:10 p.m. on November 2nd, 1923. It took 4 votes to come to that conclusion, with the first vote being 8-4 in favor of conviction. The third vote saw all but one juror voting for manslaughter, while the last juror held out for a second-degree murder conviction. Second-degree murder is when the death was deliberate but not premeditated. Manslaughter is when it was unintentional and, if involuntary, caused by negligence. The jury cited how McPhee's stories did not match and how he took the time to gather up papers and jewelry as part of why he was convicted. The 19-day trial cost nearly $4,000, almost $74,000 now. "My conscience is clear. I don't care what they do to me. I'll appeal it. I'm not guilty, and I'm going to fight for my liberty. It's a funny thing about those Melvin folk, though. I can't see why they turned against me unless it was on the account of one man," Billy remarked before he was led back to the jail, his sentencing deferred to November 27th at the request of his lawyers. Come November 20th, and McPhee's lawyers had petitioned for the verdict to be set aside, saying the prosecution had not proved a crime, that evidence had not been shown to support a charge of manslaughter, that it hadn't been proven that he had not tried to save Esther, nor that she had died because of his negligence. However, the judge denied the appeal, and financial difficulties prevented McPhee from appealing to the state Supreme Court. Thus, on November 27, 1923, William McPhee was sentenced 10 to 15 years in Jackson Prison. If McPhee showed any regret, it was that he was leaving San Juan County's jail, where he had spent about 6 months, becoming a favorite among prisoners and staff alike. He would remain at Jackson Prison until 1934, when he was released, returning to the Thumb, where he died on February 14, 1936, in a Yale hospital. He was laid to rest the next day in Melvin, the town that had scorned him only 13 years prior. And that's the end of my script.
How old was he when he died?
He was 54 when he was convicted, 13 years later.
70, so 68?
68, 67, yeah.
Did he have any health problems?
If he did, they were probably exacerbated by being in Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
He would have technically been around when McGregor was there.
Yeah, when he was the doctor there.
Yeah. So who knows? Maybe he got poisoned by McGregor.
Yeah.
Even though McGregor would brag about the fact of, like, I'm surrounded by all this medicine and I'm not poisoning anybody.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. It's not quite a satisfying ending.
No, it feels like a cop-out.
I don't think anything was really
Solved?
proven or solved or...
Which is part of the reason why this case drives me nuts / is part of the reason why we're still talking about it 100 years later.
Right. Wow.
It seems like they couldn't make up their minds or decide, so they're like, well, here's the compromise.
Right.
Again, seems to me like a town just felt guilty about somebody dying and had to blame somebody. So they blamed the most logical person.
So here's the question. So you don't think he killed her?
I don't.
What about you, Mike? You can't say manslaughter.
Right. I'm gonna do a cop out. No.
No. You can disagree with me. I don't care.
Well, it's just like I don't think they proved that he did it, but there's so much weird evidence. Like, not evidence that technically says he did it, but there's just a lot of weird details about all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even when they were trying to decide if he walked or ran to get the axe, like, that's kind of
relevant.
Yeah, like, I don't know. There's just a lot of weird details that really make you think he did it. But on the other hand, I could see how, people got riled up and it just kind of snowballed. And if the banker did have a personal beef with him and took advantage of a tragedy like that, that's some messed up stuff.
I was going to say diabolical.
That is some crazy work. That is...
Again, this is the guy who stole $34,000 from the bank 3 years later.
Right. And
possibly.
And his final statement before he was taken back to the jail after sentencing, he kind of alluded to the fact that it
was that guy.
Right.
I feel like that was the defense's ace up their sleeve,
right.
Because that was the first time I was like, oh, when, in your script. It was the first time I considered that maybe he hadn't done it, was you mentioning that George Windsor.
What about you, Nick? Do you think he did it?
I do. Like the saying, like, gun to your head, make a decision. If I absolutely had to, I would, based on the information you've given me, I think he killed her. Yeah.
That's fair. For me, it really does depend on the limbs and if they were severed or if they were burned off.
The latter is what gives me pause with the limbs. Mm-hmm. Like, I can see that happening.
Yeah.
Like them just haphazardly pulling up a body with a ladder, right? With hooks on a ladder. Yeah.
Yep.
So, but just a lot of weird stuff.
But no, for me, like, part of the reason why I don't believe that he killed her is partially because they really didn't prove the dismemberment theory, which is what they were really going for with the severing the legs thing.
Did they really try to? I mean, like, I know they like kind of discredited some of the doctors, and it seems like maybe that shut it down before they could kind of prove or disprove it one way or the other.
So the coroners all testified saying that it was cut.
Mm-hmm.
And that if it wasn't for the fact that there's so much questions about her limb bones actually being her limb bones, if it was the doctors or if it was like actual experts who had gathered up her bones.
Right. It was just random stuff. But what else would it have, like, what else is close to a human femur bone, you know, like, or an arm bone that it
That's
could have been.
fair, but I'm still suspicious, especially since Albert Clayton and George Clayton are the ones who are kind of making sure that there's a story to put him behind bars, it seems.
Right.
There's too many questions for me to say that man actually, like, do I think he was a bad husband? Yes. Do I think he was a great guy? Not really. Do I think he killed his wife? No, I actually don't think he killed his wife. Do I think that he could have done more? Yeah. But at the same time, I don't know what I would do in a fire either.
Yeah, you can't say.
Right.
You know, and it's also possible that there are, like, multiple things going on at once here. Like, if he did kill his wife, it's possible that George Windsor, whether he killed her or not, is still taking advantage of a situation.
Right.
You know, and still...
Which it seems even more petty because McPhee left the area. Like, he wasn't in Melvin anymore, so you would assume that the
Beef would be done.
Right.
What happened to his property or his house in Melvin?
Well, since
after
it was all
he was
burned.
incarcerated? But I mean, that's still like a parcel somebody owned. It'd be interesting to see property records.
I think he sold it.
Probably not to Windsor.
I would want to see.
Yeah.
But to my understanding, he sold it so that he could move out of the area.
Also, if he inherited his dad's land, like, why would Windsor be so upset about that? Like, that's...
Again,
like, you don't have a right to that.
There really wasn't any details as to what the argument between them over the estate was. The fact that I could find that he was a banker was the most illuminating part of that, because it gave a possibility of, like, okay, well, he would be interested in money. Maybe he was in debt before he died and owed the bank stuff. But they really did not go into detail about that, which was frustrating.
Do you think nowadays with modern technology and forensics that it could be solved if, like, hypothetically the case were reopened and professionals actually looked at, dug up the graves and...
I wish that I could say yes 100% I believe that, but honestly, no, I don't think so, because of the fact that it's like, again, what we would maybe find out at most is, like, whether or not those actually were her limbs. And, like, while that would be important to know and would help a lot, it still wouldn't definitively say, well, it would actually more definitively say.
Presumably the rest of, like, an identifiable part of her body that we know is her is in that casket.
Presumably.
With the limbs.
Yes.
So you obviously would do
DNA and stuff. So possibly yes, but also because it's been 100 years, I don't know if there's anything left just because of decomposition.
Let's get our shovels. Go and grave robbing.
We're coming for you, Esther.
No, I would, in all seriousness, I would like to go out there. And now knowing also that Billy is out there, I'd like to go and just see the headstones.
Graves.
Yeah.
Was he buried with her?
I think so.
I think if he was, it was like a separate headstone, because the one...
Right.
But, you know, probably next to her.
Yeah.
Because I looked it up on, like, Find a Grave or whatever it is, and her headstone is, like, just hers.
I think that kind of points to his innocence a little bit, right?
The fact that he
wanted to be buried next to his wife.
Or that's just what they did.
I mean, to be fair, there was literal... This is dark, but there were several, like, murder-suicide cases where, despite the fact that the guy killed his wife, they still held, like, a joint funeral for them and buried them side by side. So...
I guess we'll just have to dig it up then.
I guess so. And on that note, I'm Erica.
I'm Nick.
And I'm Mike Gallagher.
And that was Thumbing Through the Archives. Bye-bye.
This has been another edition of Thumbing Through the Archives on WMIC 660 AM and 95.3 FM. Catch this episode in podcast form every Thursday after the program on our website at SaniLacBroadcasting.com. Thumbing Through the Archives, produced by Mike Gallagher, Nick Lean, and Erica Frisbee, with assistance from Catherine Connolly.